Our next guest is more than a guest. He's actually no stranger and everything to the show. And for those that know him, know that you're about to get a lot of energy. You're about to get some highs. You're about to get some mids. You're about to get some lows. You're about to get something that you never really seen before from this next guest. And normally he is our co-host and everything on this show, which he has been many, many times before. But today we're going to dive deep and we're going to go to another level with Mr. Guy Steele that is going to be joining us today on the Unshakable Conversations. And we're about to be unshakable with Guy Steele. You guys about to dive deep into who he is and what he's all about. So with that being said, make sure you guys go ahead and share this with anybody that needs to hear this message right here, because I guarantee if you clicked on this video, if you clicked on this podcast, if you're listening, wherever you're listening from, this is for you. Guy Steele, welcome to the show, my man. Welcome to the show. Let's go, let's go, let's go.
Unshakable,
yes,
unshakable, unshakable.
Yes, sir.
Unshakable transparency on this one.
All the way,
all
the way.
Day.
All the way,
all
bro.
day,
What's
my
good,
boy.
man? What's good?
Chilling, man. How
Yo,
you?
I'm good, man. I'm good. So today we doing a little bit different, right? You are a guest today instead of a co-host today, right? And I wanted to go in a different route because I just felt guys saying like, yo, like you got to get Guy on the show, and you know whatever his testimony is, the people need to hear it. You know, now you are. Let's set this up. Number one, father. You know, well, man of God, father. You know what I'm saying? You know, community leader. You know what I mean? Coach. All those different things for the youth. You know, was a leader at the Boys and Girls Club, and you know, done TV. You've done many things.
Educator for sure.
Education, marriage, all that stuff or whatever. You've been involved in a lot over the years. Two beautiful children. Right. And now at this point in your life, we're elevating. God is taking you somewhere. But I want to go back. And I want you to explain, you know, who is Guy Steele, you know, to the audience, you know, from Camden, New Jersey, and what else?
I think that the one thing that that would describe me from the very beginning to the very end would be humble street kid to servant leader, right? Yeah, I've been through a lot. It made me the person I am, very, very understanding of where I come from and what that place entails, but the strength that it gave me throughout my life to just want to serve and give back to who and what made me who I am.
Yeah. Let's go back to the humble street kid, right? So take us through, what was it like growing up in Camden, and you know, at your, you know, 80s, 90s?
I think for me there was a focus on learning lessons on what was going on around me, right? My brother had been locked up for 12 years. My father and mother divorced very early in my life, in my childhood, around 5 years old. He was there, but really, really wasn't. You know what I mean? He was there financially for sure. Wasn't there as much as I needed him as a father in that place. I looked to guys on the streets to help guide me and raise me, and I was fortunate. I was one of the fortunate ones that they looked out for, took care of, and I think that just not having that male figure in my life made me search for something that was always missing.
Wow. So when you were like, you saying 5 years old, your parents split.
Yeah.
Right. How does that affect you as a young kid? Because I know there are many children out there, right, that are in blended families now, right? And although they may have respect for the bonus mom or the bonus dad, it's still not, for them, it's still not the same as their actual biological parents, right, being together, which most kids always want their parents to stay together forever.
100%.
Right? But it doesn't always work out like that.
Right.
Right? So what was it like for you? Like, what were some of the feelings that you can remember, you know, from an early age on your parents splitting up, and how did it affect you?
Resentment, hate, always uncomfortable, not knowing who I was, and you know, where life would lead. Right, as a kid, I feel like I was you know, I won't say wise beyond my years, but I had to grow up fast. Let's just say that,
Wow.
right? And so I had my father's aunt, which was my aunt, my great aunt, and my godmother. She took a real active role in trying to teach me the right way
Right.
and about respect and about women, right? But it was a woman's perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I felt, excuse me, I felt the resentment I felt toward not growing up in that nuclear family,
Mm-hmm.
not really having my father around, and how I was like, I felt like an outcast. I felt like I was by myself,
Mm.
you know. And I grew up. When I grew up, it was that's how I treated it. Right, I held a lot in. I didn't discuss anything with anybody. There were times where I kind of like exploded because of all the um the built up frustration and anger. I got lost in that, right?
Mm.
My great aunt and godmother, you know, God bless her, she before she passed, she took an active role in making sure that like I was introduced to Christ, right? So she grew me up in the Baptist church until I was about 13, right? Ever since the nursery.
Mm-hmm.
And I never really received it, you know, I never really received it, but she always reminded me of how I was under the pew, sleep under the pew, on the pew, sleep, you know, like kind of like how she always took me to church and how she
Yeah.
introduced me to Christ. When I was 13 years old, I remember these situations like they were yesterday. Um, I went into her house with like jeans and a sweater on for church, and she was like, um, "You got to go home and get dressed." And so for me, it was one of those rare moments that I exploded, especially on a person that just had unwavering love for me.
Yeah.
Right? I was like,
Wow.
everything at your church is like a fashion show, and
Mm.
I ain't going no more. And I stormed out her house, and I was like 13 years old, and I never went back to church for a long time after that.
Mm.
Like I shied away, and it was just you know, my great aunt godmother was my everything. So what I did was like as I got older, as in my adulthood, and she needed to go to church, I would like drive her to church,
Mm.
but I wouldn't go.
Mm.
And so yeah, I think that just growing up, not really having those, not really understanding the lessons that I was being taught, and just allowing the anger to guide me.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
how do
it's
you
crazy.
look at the resentment factor? Right.
Mm-hmm.
There's many people, even adults,
Mm-hmm.
to this day
Mm-hmm.
that resent their mom,
Yep.
their dad,
Yep.
the trauma that they've been through,
Right.
right? Let's go there, right? The molestation that they've been
Yeah.
through, right? The abuse that they've been through, and they resent. And then when somebody comes along that shows love,
Mm-hmm.
shows compassion,
Yeah.
shows all the things that you have always wanted, you then push back on those people, or you explode
Yeah.
because of, like you said, all the stuff that's in there.
Yeah. That pushback is the fact that you don't know how to receive it. I didn't get no bonus,
Wow.
nobody. I
Wow.
ain't get no bonus, nobody. If you want it all the way real, I'm gonna give you all the way
Yeah, let's
real.
go.
So my father, he was a law enforcement officer for 42 years, 38 as in one place and 20 as the chief. Right. He always brought his job home, so he was always physically abusive to everyone.
Mm.
Um, he never changed. My mother, who since this time gave her life to Christ, and she's a new person, but she was very mentally and emotionally abusive,
Mm-hmm.
and it was rough growing up because my brother had ran away with his father, who we have a different father. My older brother, and older sister have a different father, and he ran away with his father, and a lot of the pressure was on me and my sister to kind of grow up dealing with these different things. Um, so after a while, my sister then ran away with her father, and I was by myself to deal with these things and these pressures of life on my own. Like I said, I didn't share these things with nobody. I held them in, and I was just dying inside because of it. And that resentment comes in the fact that, excuse me, I was never felt like I had nobody. You know what I mean? I felt like I was on my own throughout. And the resentment also comes in the fact that, you know, one of those, no matter how rough my parents were around the edges, right? I was always the type that was like, I could talk about my parents, but nobody else can, right?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
so even though I ain't get no bonus, nobody, you know, we would be in situations and my father's character would be in question, and I would defend him, right? Because deep down inside, I knew or I felt like he was my Superman,
Yeah.
right? He was a law enforcement officer, right? Because of where I grew up, I had a disdain or a dislike for law enforcement officers, but my father was like different, right? He was this huge personality that I always wanted to fill his shoes. Even though I had dislike and just a strong feeling of just disdain for him, because of how he treated us. You know, I always saw him as these shoes that I wanted to fill, this personality. And so as I grew up, you know, when I say I learned lessons from what was happening around me, this was one of them, right? I promised myself that I would never put my hands on a woman because of what I saw and what I experienced, right? With my mother, I promised myself I would never, I don't want to say browbeat, but you know, be as assertive with pessimism, right? And be as negative as she was. I think that for me, it was important to, you know, learn from those lessons. You know, bro, I'll tell you one experience, right?
Yeah.
One night I was sleeping, and I had to be like 10, maybe 12 years old, and I used to play Little League baseball.
Yeah.
And it was always screaming and yelling in my house since a kid. Yeah, screaming and yelling, screaming and yelling. And so I never really slept. I never really slept good. Never in my life slept good until kind of adulthood here and there. But so there was some yelling and screaming. My mom busts into my room. This is like her long-term boyfriend. She busts into my room, grabs one of my bats out of my closet, and like it's just like I'm a kid, bro, and I'm like what is she doing? And she runs outside the room and she's screaming and yelling, go back to sleep, and she goes into the backyard, and I mean there was stuff happening downstairs between them as far as like aggression, but she went down to the backyard and smashed his front windshield out.
Snap.
Like as a kid,
Yeah.
bro, like different. This ain't the only experience I had, but it was like constant.
Yeah.
And so there was an animosity that was always there. Like it wouldn't leave me.
Right.
It was this black cloud. I felt like it was a black cloud all over my life. So that speaks to the resentment, you know, that you asked about. Like just
and I've met your mom.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And she is and here's where I want to tie it in, right? Because this is the great part. And although that's the past,
Yeah.
look at what God has done in her life today.
Yeah. Amen.
Right? Because she is not nothing what she looked like she's probably been through.
Yeah. Amen. Yeah, for sure.
Right?
For sure. Let me tell you, so my testimony toward what God has done in my life and their lives, right? Well, since my dad's passed since, but
and let me just say this one more thing, right? Because you said something that you said people you could talk about your parents, but other people couldn't, right?
Right.
And I just wanted to get this across because there's so many people that think like that as well, because they may have a resentment for their mom or dad or whatever. But the Bible also says that to honor thy mother and thy father. It's a commandment, right? It's the only commandment that will give you a long life, only with a promise, right? If you do this, you're gonna have a long life.
Yes.
What's so crazy about that? It says it doesn't say, honor thy mother and thy father whether they deserve it or not, right? And although you may have had some anger towards your parents, when it came to defending them, you still covered them, even inside your anger.
Yeah. You know what I say to that scripture, though? A lot of people just read it for, respect thy mother and thy father. I believe after that it says something about respecting your kids, too.
Yeah.
And so they don't read that. They don't read that part. And I used to have a problem with not that scripture, but like people would take a piece of it, and I'd be like, well, what about me? You understand what I'm saying? Yeah, respect thy mother and thy father, but when they treat you like crap, then what about me?
Right.
So, but as a kid, you're very, I want to say selfish, because you only think about yourself, and there are times that you have to, right? You have to guard your heart, right, as the word says, right? And so it doesn't say guard your heart from friends or guard your heart from the streets of the world, guard your heart from family, guard your heart. So guard your heart is from everybody. Like I was guarded, right? I was guarded, and I wasn't reading scripture back then. I'm just kind of applying the word that I know now to what was going on back then. I'll tell you the testimony to them, to my parents, and the relationship that I built with them was this. So about 8 years ago, I went through a divorce. I was together with a young lady for 10 years, married for 5. Like you said, raised 2 beautiful children together. After that 5 years of marriage, we just weren't living our marriage conducive to what that type of relationship should have been, right? Partying on Saturday, going to church on Sunday, traveling, kind of like there was like a rotation of people that was watching our kids as we went out. We was partying hard. We was young. And we lived like that, very, very immature. And there were times where we tried to live that mature life, but we were so far in it that I'll take personal responsibility. I couldn't get enough, right, of the party life, of the world. We wasn't really heavy in the church or heavy in the word, like receiving it, really living it, right? Because the word says sacrifice is cool, but obedience is even better, right? You might sacrifice to go to church, but obeying him outside of church is a whole nother story. And we just weren't living like that. And so long story short, throughout when my ex-wife finally said, I'm done, and it shifted something in me, right? Because in relationships, right, I'll talk about relationships in general. There are people who forgive, right? And when they shut the door on you, they leave it unlocked, right? So then there's a period where you may be able to walk back in, and then the door gets locked the next time, because there was chances. I was given chances, right?
Yeah.
And the door got locked. So I'm like, dang, the door locked. I'm like,
right.
I'm going to go in through this window. There's an apology, there's a forgiveness, and you get another shot.
Yeah.
When the door gets locked and the window gets shut and that get locked too, when the no becomes no for real, bro, I felt like I failed as a father. I felt like I failed as a husband. I felt like, and the thing is, we was both living wild.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, what about her? Like, I'm getting...
That joint became a whole abandoned building in Camden, like boarded up and all. Like, you can't get in.
Can't get in the back door, the yard, nothing. But I'm saying to myself, in a relationship, we become like, try to be like the victim, and sometimes we don't take responsibility for our own actions. But I was like, honestly, like, we living this life together. It was real wild, and it was definitely not something.
What's the lesson in all this or whatever for somebody that's listening right now, right? Like, what do you feel would be a valuable takeaway from that? Because for me, it's indicating that, okay, let me put this in perspective, right? Even from a biblical perspective, because you hit this key here. You said you were married, and then y'all got divorced, separated. You then take responsibility for your actions, or you knew that you were messing up, right? And then the door was shut, but then it was still open, so you can come back in, right? So it's like saying, okay, there's some repentance going on, and then you get to come back in now, right? You open the door, but then you mess up again, and then now that door is locked. Like, hold up, right? And then you go into the window. You try to sneak in through the window, and then okay, cool. Now we're back at it again. Apologies accepted, and now that you messed up again because you keep doing the same thing over and over and over again, somewhere along the line, we're not in alignment, we're not in agreement. You really want to live like the world, and you don't want to be in my house, right? And what's happening now is that it's all boarded up because time done ran out, right? And oftentimes we think that in this world that we can go out and do what it is that we want to do, go back to God. God going to forgive us, and we're going to keep going back and opening that door over and over and over again, and it's all good. Like, yeah, we go to church. Yeah, we read the Bible. Yeah, we serving in the streets and in the homeless and this and that and third, but we still doing the same things that God doesn't want us to do. And yet, you know, he continues to forgive us, but there's going to be a point in time where you're going to have to pick a side.
Right.
Either you're going to go my way or not at all.
Right.
Right.
We think of it as our partner's home or our home, and we have to act as if it's God's home. Right. And so that door you're opening is not one of your partner or yours, is God's house, and he's kind of letting you back in, right? Although we were living that life together and both messing up, you know, quote unquote messing up, there was there was always I take personal responsibility. Like I took responsibility for my own actions, right? And so no matter what the other end or the other partner was doing, I was like, I want to be forgiven, but you know, eventually, like I said, I lost everything.
Did you feel some type of way? Because you said, what about her?
Yeah. Well, there was absolutely, I felt some type of way because we were living that life together, and she was not accepting responsibility for her own actions, right? So there was a resentment, there was anger there too.
Can I interject?
Yeah,
bro, because you know we just chopping it up.
Yeah,
right. You know what comes to mind when I hear that, and I'm gonna need you to chew on this like later, right? And we've read this story hundreds of times, and it's the story of Adam and Eve. Eve ate the apple, but they were doing life together. He knew that Adam knew what he wasn't supposed to do, right? And what ends up happening is that Eve is the one that's persuaded. Eve was the one that was, you know, like Satan spoke to her, the serpent came, talked to her, or whatever. Boom, go ahead. Like, did God really say that? Right? And then started questioning her mind. And then, you know, sin comes into the world, but God says, Adam, where art thou? Right? What's up? What's happening? Oh, well, psh. He points the finger and everything to Eve. He said, but no, I gave you dominion over it. I told you, I gave you this is you, right? You're the one that's responsible. So he didn't take responsibility. And then he goes to Eve. All right, cool. Goes to Eve, and then he tries to tell Eve, well, the serpent made me do it, pretty much. Right? I'm paraphrasing. The serpent made me do it.
Yep.
And then he goes to the serpent, did you? Da-da-da. Yep, I did. Okay, cool. Now you got dominion. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, wow. He went to the man, then he went to the woman, and then he went to, you know, the serpent. And it's like, that's another lesson.
Yeah.
When do we say, hey, I'm taking full-blown responsibility no matter what. It's all me. Right? It's my fault. Like, it's my fault that this happened. It's my fault that it went down like this, even though it may not be my fault, but it is my responsibility, right? And I think that that's a lesson in itself that we have to, you know, start to take ownership, right?
Yeah.
All this really is about ownership in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how do we take ownership over everything? Like, we can't be owners over the good things and not owners over the bad.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because you ran a Boys and Girls Club, right?
Yeah.
There was some good or some bad or whatever, and you running an organization like that. Hey, you gotta take the good and the bad. You know.
Mm-hmm. I think that taking responsibility for what transpired is one thing.
Yeah.
Taking mutual responsibility over the consequences is another.
Yeah.
Right? That's what we run away from. It's crazy because we won't run away from what's happening in the world, but when them consequences come, we, like you said, start pointing the finger.
Yeah.
As far as the nonprofit world or Boys and Girls Club, youth, when I came back to town 17 years ago, youth became my passion, right? Because doing television for 3.5 years and being on and off camera, traveling the world, and interviewing celebrities and all that was all great and good, but I knew I couldn't do that as a father, right? As a father, I couldn't do that. That I wanted to be there for my daughter at the time. I have a son and a daughter, but at the time, being there for my daughter was important. I was given the option to not come back and continue on with my career, and I chose to come back to town. So, in raising my daughter, I saw so much of myself in her and so much of her in me, and it translated easily into youth-based organizations, community, and back to the city of Camden where I grew up, right? And so wanting to give back what I had learned and what I was given, everything that I was given, I wanted to give back.
Yeah.
Boys and Girls Club in Camden County became my home for 6 years. And ages 2 to 22, I mean, I've served all ages from 2 to 22 on my city for the last 17. And that season of my life was one of just stop and settle down, right? I'm like an avid businessman. Like, I'm always hustling. I'm always doing something. I'm always grinding. And that was a season that was just like, okay, this is it. Settle down here. Create a home, right? And it was a home. It was a home for me. It was a home for my spirit. And it was a home for many kids who still come to me today, and 22, 23 years old. That's like, you saved
good.
my life. You did this for me. I remember the conversations we had. I got kids who were young, who were maybe like 7, 8 years old, who now have played for me as high school football players.
Yeah.
So, and they remember the impact that I had on them.
Do you feel like the experiences that you've had as a young kid have had an effect on you as, somewhat of a mentor as an adult for these kids? Like the things that you've been through, and even for your own kids as well.
Yeah, I do believe that it had a strong impact on me because, honestly, whether growing up in Camden or anywhere else, when you are giving people personal or professional development coaching, or you talking to them about life, people rarely receive it when you've not experienced the same things as them, right? People receive it a little different, like, yo, I really went through this. So in my city, I find that there's a lot of excuses. And so for me, when I teach and go, look, I'm not teaching you X's and O's when I'm on the football field. Or
You're teaching life.
I'm teaching about life, right?
Yeah.
And I'm teaching you life because I'm saying there's no excuses. I've been through it, and I've come through it. So I got a couple scars on me, but I'm proof that you can make it too.
Let me ask you a question, bro. Like, because it's getting deep right now. You've been through, so we covered, your beginning stages, things with your father. You know what I'm saying? Which to my knowledge, you guys have mended that or whatever.
Yeah. We mended that before he passed away.
Yeah.
There's a testimony in that as well.
Amen. We're gonna get there. We talked about mom, BC mom. I'm gonna say BC.
BC mom.
BC mom.
That's
right.
Good. No, that's good.
And now, and then you mentioned that you went through a divorce and things of that nature, and I'm pretty sure that impacted your children and everything as well too, right? Because you've experienced it, you've been through that. But I want to talk about, when you really came to Christ, like fully, right? Because you said at 13 or whatever, you was like, yo, I'm good, I'm out, right? But just like the prodigal son or whatever, you actually you ended up coming to your senses and everything, coming back in,
Yeah.
right? And what was that moment like for you? Was it like, yo, everything is ripped away, and God, you all I got? Like, what was that moment? The moment that you said, you know what, I ain't got nothing else to lose.
Again, I remember these moments like they were yesterday, and I'll tell you, in the separation, feeling like I lost everything. I lost everything. Like I felt like I lost everything. Had nothing, no one. So it was pretty much back to my childhood of feeling alone, right? Feeling like a failure as a father, feeling like a failure as a husband, feeling like a failure as a partner, a person, right? Because when you're in youth development, there are children that look up to you that may not be your children, right? So you're not being that representative even for them, right? So you're preaching this life to these youth and you're not living it, right? So I lost everything. I felt like I lost respect. And none of these people said none of that, like, oh, we lost respect for you or whatever. It was just how I felt. So the moment was this. I was laying in a bedroom. It was a house that I lived in, but I only stayed in that one bedroom because a friend of mine had one bedroom. And I got strep throat this one night, right? And I was not feeling well. I went to sleep, and all I heard was like screaming and yelling and screeching, like. And then I seen images of the devil, right? This was and I kind of woke up out of the sleep, and was like shaking it off, like, oh, that was just a dream. But every time I would close my eyes, it would get worse and worse, right? And I was trying to like wake up thinking that it was like 6:30 in the morning where I could get ready for work. But nah, it was 1 o'clock turned into like 1:20. 1:20, I woke up again at like 1:50. And I'm like, 6 o'clock, hurry up. I don't want to see this no more. Like I was like shook. 1:50 turned into like 2:30. It would not end. So long story short, just waking up and hearing these voices and seeing these images, I knew something was going on. I'm on this air mattress, right? So halfway through the night, probably around 4 o'clock in the morning, right? Maybe I would say closer to 5, right? I wake up and my pillow was all wet, right? I'm guessing with sweat or whatever, but the air conditioner was on in this room.
Yeah.
So then 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock turned into like 5:30, 5:50. My sheets became wet. By the time, and I'm talking corner to corner wet. Corner to corner wet. The next time I woke up, the comforter that was over top of my sheets was like all wet. And I'm like, oh, this is all sweat, right? But after everything subsided and I woke up in the morning, I really felt like that was a coming to Christ moment.
Yeah.
Right? Like
Wow.
basically being like baptized, like coming from one season or stage through to another, but it took that. Don't get me wrong, it didn't fix everything. I didn't get up and be like, oh, everything's better. No, when a marriage, because the word says to become one, right? When a marriage
Yes.
is torn apart,
Yeah.
I felt like I was being torn down the middle.
Wow.
Like I was physically being. That's how the pain was so bad. I was speaking to a pastor at one point, and he was like, I never heard screaming like that in my office because we was doing like counseling. And he was like, I never heard screaming like that. When I finally got the papers, like the papers that said it's a rat, which was like a year later, because in Jersey, that's the law. It tore me down the middle, and I just felt I felt that pain. So that coming to age moment of coming to Christ, I was like, yo, like, I ain't got no other choice, right?
Yeah.
I said, I've heard many things, but let's see if this is real. And so
you started to test this thing out.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Right.
So where I started was going back to my parents. So I said, oh, and I started to like talk to God. Like, yeah, I was reading the word, but I was like in and out. And I was like, oh, so if you say forgiveness is the answer, we gonna see. So the one person I knew in my life that I had to forgive more than anybody else was my father.
Wow.
And I went to my father, and it was after that night, right? After that night kind of woke me up like, all right, so we're going to test this out. Go to my father, and I go, listen, I want to say that I forgive you, and I want to ask for forgiveness because I know I wasn't the easiest person to raise growing up. Very disrespectful, very, just angry. And he was like, what you forgiving me for? And I was like, do we have to discuss this? At this point, I'm grown in my 30s.
Yeah.
Younger 30s, but 30s. So I'm like, you don't remember, putting your hands on my mom? I've seen pictures and I've had to hear, I heard things throughout my childhood that, I remember everything. And so he was like, what you talking about? He was like, eventually he was like, you know what? Did you ask your mom about it? And I was like, nah, I ain't asked her, but I just wanted to say, I forgive you, and I just wanted to ask for forgiveness. Now, this was actually the way my dad was, right? He would ask that again. He would ask that a couple times again, like, well, what? You remember when you forgave me? It'd be like weeks later, and me and my dad would increase our communication and trying to build. And he'd be like, what were you forgiving me for? And I said, do you want to discuss this again? And he would be like, yeah. And I'd be like, look, man, I was showing pictures of you black in my mom's eye. And, you always took a belt to all of us, dragging people down the stairs. I remember, like, vividly stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so I would have to go describe these things over and over and again to him because I don't think he really, maybe he didn't feel like I remembered or whatever. But it stopped after a while. It stopped. The questions of why you forgiving me stopped after a while, right? So in the midst of this, right, once I forgave my father that first time, it felt like cinder blocks had been dropped off my back, right?
Wow.
Cinder blocks had come off my back, right? And so I was like, yo, this is, I'm feeling lighter. So I said, okay, God, if this is real, then we're going to try this again. And we're going to try it with my mom. So there was this day that she was being baptized.
Your mom?
My mom was.
Yeah.
Right. She had got into church. My brother got out of jail after 12 years. He put my mom on to Christ, and my mom was, of course at first like, what? But she got on, and ever since then, like, she's changed. But he had changed his life in prison.
Hold up.
And then came out, and he's a new person.
So your brother goes to prison.
Yeah.
12 years.
Yeah.
Gets out.
Yeah, he's a new person.
New person.
Yeah, giving his life to Christ in prison.
Wait, is your brother the one that comes to church with us?
Yeah. Yeah.
Boy head?
Yeah.
For real?
Yeah.
Oh, snap. I didn't even know that. So wait, all right, so Busted. So
that's his story to tell.
Yeah,
I usually don't tell it, but
that's all good. Yeah, we'll get there. So so brother goes to prison, 12 years, boom,
comes out new
person, boom, push your mom on to Christ.
Yeah.
Bang.
And
continue.
She eventually was like, at first she's like, nah, whatever, still partying, still living her life, and eventually got on. And so long story short, they were going to this church together, right? And they were baptizing my mom. So I'm sitting at my ex-in-law's house, or my in-law's house, because we still cool. And they're like, your mom is getting baptized today. And I went to the place where she was getting baptized, and I sat in a chair next to her. Now, I was still kind of like, not lukewarm, but I was still like trying to believe what Christ was telling me.
Yeah.
So I sit down right next to her. It's a group of people. It's a big group. It's a pool. They all getting baptized. I sit down next to her, and I said, listen, before you go into that water and come up wondering if I forgive you or if, if we're cool, I just want to tell you, I forgive you, and I apologize on my behalf for, how tough it was raising me. I know growing up by myself, it got worse and worse because I got more and more disrespectful as time went on. But I just want to tell you, I forgive all the stuff that we've been through together, and I apologize for my part.
Yeah.
And she was like, I don't know why you apologizing to me, because that don't, it was a lot of attitude. And I don't want to say there was no acceptance, but there was kind of it was just expressed in a different way, just like my father, but in a different way. Like, I ain't do nothing, right? And so, bro, like, with that situation, like, you would have to talk about my mom's past in order to really know how far she's come. The person she is now is nothing like that.
Wow.
Like, Christ was all over her.
Wow.
Right? Christ is all over her. But my brother is like a whole nother story, he just, like I said, he introduced her, and she was like combatant to it, and then accepted it, and now it's like, so today is Friday where people are getting baptized
Yes.
at High Place Church.
Yep.
And my mother actually brought 2 people that are getting baptized. She brought them to High Place Church.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
Wow.
So the story goes on and on.
Your mom, I don't know what it is about your mom, and for whatever reason we're going here, but it's something about her that's really special, right? And every time I see her, it's just like, she's like another mother in a sense. And we haven't even had that many conversations together, but you could just tell, like, she has this covering over her.
Yeah.
That she'll put over myself, or she'll put over anybody else and everything in the church. And what you're expressing, it's like, wow, I know that everybody has a past and everybody has a story. So there's absolutely no judgment or anything like that, but I'm in awe at how God has worked in her life, in your life. So describe your relationship today.
All right, so I'll start with my father, because he has passed, and there was a brief time where we were able to receive Christianity together, right? He, like I say, was a law enforcement officer for 42 years and 38 at one place and 20 as the chief. I looked up to him, even though I just had this disdain, but he would pick me up, right, and he would take me to work. So he worked so much that on his visits, he would take me to work, and I would just be there, like sitting there, right? I moved him. I helped him as I grew up. I would help him move from one office to the other, from sergeant to lieutenant, from lieutenant to captain, from captain to chief. When we were going through the apologetic stage and trying to help understand each other a little more, he did one thing, right? He always lived by this this phrase, stay the course, right? Stay the course, stay the course, stay the course. And he would always tell me, stay the course. But during this time of retirement, he was retiring, and we are mending this relationship and these fences. He told me one thing one day. I'm sitting in his office. I said, look, you don't have nothing else to prove. Ride off on your white horse, travel, do whatever you want to do. But this wasn't, law enforcement wasn't just what he did. It was who he was, right? So he was hard for him to accept leaving.
Absolutely.
He said, when I have to make tough decisions, you know what I always do? And I'm looking at him, I'm like, what? And he pulled a Bible out of his desk. I never knew to do even, you know what I mean? Had a Bible, looked at it, scripture or anything. But that was just something that was like, that brought us together in that way at that time.
Let me ask you a question, right? Because this is good, right? Being in the field of the youth or some forms of personal growth, professional development, things of that nature, right? You oftentimes find people that are successful that no matter how much success they achieve in whatever field that they're in, at some point, more times than not, they get to a point where they say, all these attributes are good, but what does it really mean if you don't have, some form of faith, right? In the higher power, right? you just explain your father as somebody who was abusive, who went through all this stuff, right? And then you go into the fact that you're in his office and he's saying what his go-to is, and you're saying you never even knew he even owned the Bible.
Yeah, yeah.
Because you, like, the guy that you grew up to know,
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah.
But ain't it funny how no matter how much money you get, no matter how much you actually achieve, that somewhere along the line, somebody just may sit there and somebody's probably listening to this right now and be like, yo, something's missing in my life.
100%. I say it now. I'm not just an educator. I'm master's degree. I make good money. I do a lot of things. I met you, and we've been doing this thing for years and developing this, and it's been phenomenal, right? It's been so amazing,
right?
But when I'm in my house alone, and I sit there, and I don't got Kenny next to me, I don't got cameras in front of me, I don't got mom and dad talking to me, I don't got nothing. You know what I mean? I feel like there's something missing. I feel like I'm missing something, like some type of connection, right? And so that's when I reach out to God the most. It's like that, I don't want to say that worldly saying, but it's like that saying we use and we go, all of these things are nothing without somebody to share it with. And so when we talk about companionship, we initially go to like a physical being and not the spirit.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
And so, when God allows you to accomplish all these things and you not sharing it with him, he a jealous God. So it becomes that you choosing between that companion or that person in the world and him.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's important.
What happens when we accept Christ, we accept God, but then we are at a point where we still want to do what we want to do, right? And we want to what do we call we backpedal or we backslide, and it's like the flesh takes over.
Yeah, I've done it.
Yeah, the flesh takes over. What do we do? How do we, in your view, in your mind, you've backslid, you've done things or whatever, right? In knowing God, in knowing better, right? For somebody that's listening right now, they're probably backsliding. They probably, at a point where they going back to their old ways. Knowing what their old ways is going, what road that's going to lead them down, right? But they're in their house alone, and they're in their own head, right? What do we do?
You talked about being in your head, right? So what happens is there's an acceptance that has to happen. We might know we doing we not supposed to be doing, but there's an acceptance that you have to be like, all right, I have to accept that I'm not being obedient, because we could be obedient. Because look, the world is easier. It's easier that way, just to be doing whatever I want to do, and in doing that, you don't get me wrong, we condemn ourselves. People who backslide, I sit there and be like, when is this going to end? When are you just going to, be serious about this and give it all up? We first have to realize that these things happen in cycles, right? Yeah. So it's cyclic. So I only did it once, or it only happened twice, but it happens in cycles. And so once you start to see the cycle, then there's an acceptance piece that you have to have.
So are you saying that we have to have an awareness of the cycle?
Absolutely.
Okay.
You have to have an awareness of yourself to know it's a cycle, right? So it's heavy that you have to know not who you were, but who you are now, where
Right.
you've come from to where you're at, to know. Because I even have cycles, like, look, we have generational cycles,
Right.
you know, that have happened uh, in my divorce and separation, right? And
Right.
so to see that in my life, you have to see the cyclic, you know, the transformations and the things that happen through those cycles.
Mm-hmm.
And once you see that, then you have to accept the fact that there's a problem, right?
Right.
Because we can be like, I'm doing this, but I haven't seen a problem, right? Or haven't seen nothing come from it.
Right.
It's important that we accept that there is a problem and there needs to be something that changes or gets fixed in it. I think that
So what's the first step? What's the first step? How does somebody's listening to this right now?
Yeah.
What's the first step that they do to change it?
self-evaluation.
Okay.
Yeah, self-evaluation. Sit down and yeah, there may be a lot of great things going on in your life, but let's pinpoint what the root of all these issues might be. Right? You told me something recently.
But Guy, it's all on them.
Right.
They're the problem, right? I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing,
Yeah.
right? So so how do we answer that? You got somebody in their mind, they don't feel like the root problem is them. They the problem.
Yeah. But we have to take like I said earlier, you got to take personal responsibility over what your part was.
Okay.
Right? So you may not say, it's easier to say, well, I'm not the issue over the whole thing, but you do have personal responsibility over some things.
Okay.
Right? So that step to be like, okay, I did do this wrong, or I could have done this better.
Right.
Or, you know, maybe I could have been better at this. You know, when you uplift, inspire, and encourage people on a regular basis, right, you tend to be so optimistic, right? I was telling a friend yesterday, I'm tired of being so optimistic that I lose sight of the fact that there's a part of me inside that I feel like I'm still sad or I'm still missing something, right? And so I think that awareness, that personal awareness, comes in the fact of knowing ourselves well enough to be like, okay, I was wrong.
Okay.
Right? You have to accept the fact that you was wrong in one way, shape, or form.
Right.
Right. You may not be wrong in the whole thing.
Right.
But taking your personal responsibility, I think that's that first step.
That's the first step.
And accepting.
So learning how to accept the fact that you were wrong.
Yeah.
Right.
The
not
parts that you were wrong.
The parts that you was wrong in.
Yeah.
Not focusing on what they did wrong.
Yeah.
Right? Because what we do, this is what we do, right? What we do is we sit here, we're like, I was wrong here, but
yeah, there's always a but.
So what we should be doing is eliminating the but factor, or the factor of, listen, holding yourself solely accountable, and that's it. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Just really ripping away on what it is that what was your part in it.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, what was your part in it, and how did that affect everyone else? Because the reality is, what happens, it affects what we do affects others. It affects our families. It could affect our job. It could affect our church. It could affect the people that go to our church. It could affect the pastors. It could affect anybody that's close to us, because of the things that we are partaking in from a fleshly standpoint. Right. So, but being aware of that is step number one.
Yeah, you used the word, you said how it affected others, right?
Yeah.
I think accepting the fact that it did affect others is the first step.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Okay.
So not how it affected them, because honestly, you may not even see the effects on someone else, right? They may be like, everything good. I don't worry about nobody, that don't talk to me no more, or whatever the case may be. You may not see those effects, but just accepting the fact that it did have outside consequences.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Not just affecting you, but affected others.
Wow.
Our decisions affect others is the biggest thing that people should pay attention to in everyday life. You know, whether it be how nice you treat them, or how patient you are with them, how calm you were with them, how aggressive and assertive you were, right? Because that's all about I and me. You know, not so much how it affected them and what were the consequences, but there were consequences to it.
Right.
Yeah,
So step number one, we gotta be able to self-evaluate,
yeah, self-evaluate for sure.
and that's not just a one-time thing.
Right, ongoing.
That's ongoing. It's
Mm-hmm.
daily.
Yeah,
We should be checking our hearts daily. We
Yeah.
should be checking ourselves daily, like, because we're imperfect individuals,
Mm-hmm.
right? Somebody said, somebody online said, all of this is the same thing. Like, I think I posted something with Urban Fryer,
Mm-hmm.
and he said, it's all the same type of content. Everybody's messed up. Everybody's this. Everybody's that. Da 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 da. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started to ask myself the question. Well, it sounds like that you keep getting the same content for a reason, because clearly you ain't getting it.
Mm-hmm.
You ever wonder why you keep getting the same type of content? You ever wonder why everybody keeps saying the same thing? Because sometimes maybe either A, you're getting it because you need to continuously hear it repeatedly, or B, somebody has come up new to the situation and they're going through it right now.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing new under the sun.
Yeah.
Right? But in your experience, right, being that there's nothing new under the sun, you've done things that have been in cycle.
Yeah.
You've seen some of the same type of content.
Right.
And not from a virtual perspective, but from a real life perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So we self-evaluate. After we self-evaluate, what do? Right? We checked ourselves. Now what?
Now you have to start living in that, right? So you live in that in a way of, now that you're conscious of how your actions or reactions affect other people, then you start being obedient to that thought, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking practical. Practical, and not even talking to the word, but it is spiritual, that type of speech, right?
Right.
You have to start living in that in the way that you carry yourself, right? So be more conscious. You know how people are like, I don't care what I say, I am who I am, and they gonna have to accept me or not.
Right.
There's people that be that way, but at the same time, once you like you said, check yourself, you start understanding, you start choosing your words differently, and how you speak to people differently and things like that.
Right. So let's go here. Let's switch it up. What doesn't work? What's not gonna work?
What do you mean?
What doesn't, like, in this process? Like, here's the thing. Here's what's not, like, what doesn't work for people, right? Or from a personal development standpoint, what's worked, what hasn't worked for you? Like, what are some tools that you see that may work for others, but it don't work for you?
Yeah. I'll tell you, not so much tools just yet, right? But I'll go into just quality self-content, right? Being selfish doesn't work, right? Responding and receiving, right? Talking, speaking, and receiving in a manner that I just think about myself doesn't work, right? The servant leader in me has always I become that because I think of bettering others.
Yep.
And in bettering others, I better myself.
Yeah.
Right? So being selfish don't work. I say that to say there are some times and some aspects where you have to be selfish, right? You have to be selfish in the way that you introspect, right? Because you can't help nobody else if you can't help yourself first, especially in the job that we do.
Amen.
Yeah, that's what doesn't work, right? You have to remain selfless. You have to come with someone else's the bettering of someone else in the forefront of your mind.
Yeah.
I think that also when we self-evaluate, right, we tend to not understand that there's people that look up to us, right? Then lessons that you're passing down. You know, they tend to not look at it big picture, right? You have to look at it big picture. What doesn't work is when you look at it just in the now sense, right? When you think in the now sense and you don't think of the long-lasting effects that your decisions are going to make, right, on your kids, on other kids that are watching you. You may not have kids, but shoot, you got nieces, nephews that like look up to you, right? And so all these things very, very important. But what doesn't work is that just that selfish or that individual. You know.
I'll say this. Let me add on to that. I know we got a couple minutes left, but you know what's not going to work? What's not going to work is you continuously telling yourself that you can't. You continuously repeating the same cycles. You continuously not looking at yourself in the mirror. Right? What's not going to work is you not checking your own heart. What's not going to work is you sitting there saying to everyone else is the problem, and the reason why I am the way that I am is because of this person or that person. What's not going to work for you is the fact that if you don't sit down and humble yourself, if we don't humble ourselves, if we don't sit there and have any type of humility, if we don't see exactly what we did wrong, that's not going to work for you. Right? And furthermore, there are people out there that, unfortunately, it don't matter how good the advice is. Great words of wisdom, it's almost impossible to penetrate a hardened heart.
Right. Because what won't work is saying I'm old and I'm set in my ways.
Exactly.
You feel me? Like even that right there, you know, people say, well, you know, this is who I am and this is how I am and this is how I've been for so long and I'm not going to change, or I'm not going to change for nobody. Like it's not going to work. It's not going to work.
So here's my question. When did you want to change for you? When did you want to change for yourself? You said, like, people said, I'm not changing for nobody. The question is, are you going to change for yourself?
You know what? Honestly, because we being real, I'm still in that process.
Come on now.
Because I want to change for my kids. You know, I want to change for those who Christ has changed. You know, I don't want to say I want to change for those who have changed for me, because I don't know anybody else, right? I don't know what their intentions were, but I'm just saying, like, I want to change for what God has done for others. I want to change for what God has done for me. I want to change for my children. I want to change for the children that look up to me. I want to change for people like you that have always kind of had my back. I want to change, but where do I say, yo, I want to change for me? And so I think that I'm still in that process, and in all the transparency that to give to someone else that may be watching, right? I'm still in that process. But I think you asked what doesn't work. What does work is never quit.
Come on now.
Never quit. Fall down 7 times, get up 8. You know, those type of statements and cliches.
Let me say this, bro. Yeah, because
never quit.
You mentioned never quit, and this is why this is unshakable, right? For anybody that's out there listening, like, I get the cliche term of, you know, never quit, and it sounds like everybody says that, right? But I want you to imagine yourself on what does life look like when you don't quit? What does life look like when you keep going? What does life look like, you know, 3 months from now, 5 months from now, 6 months from now, because you didn't give up? Because you said to yourself, like, I have to keep going. Because I've come this far, I have to keep going. Like, bro, like, for me, I've come this far, where, and this is just my transparency moment, I've been through a divorce. I've been through, you know, shady friends, shady individuals. I've done my part of being shady. I've done my part of, you know, of being deceitful. I've done my part of doing all those horrible things, because I'm not excluded, but I've also experienced the the hurtfulness and the things that people try to bring you down because they see something in you, but they don't want you to get there before they get there. They don't want you to get to that next level before they get to their next level, right? Or because they may be in a position where they're comfortable, and because you're uncomfortable going to another level, they resent that, right? But you can't quit.
Right.
You can't give up on those moments, because if you do, then you don't have the legacy. You don't have what God put you in. You don't have the purpose. You die full instead of dying empty.
I'm gonna add to that, right? You used a word that was like blasting in my head just now. You used the word legacy, right? When you start to think in the way of never quitting, you start to change the thought of what I said earlier of thinking in the now to thinking in the future, right?
Yeah.
When you start thinking of the never quit, you start to think of what could happen in your future,
Yeah.
what will happen in your future, right?
Yeah.
It is we are living a life based on legacy. Like, what do you leave behind, right? What do you leave behind to your children? What do you leave behind to generations after you? What are you leaving? What in your spirit are you going to leave for someone else to carry on? Because that's how our spirits are carried on. We may move into the afterlife, but you know what? The pieces of our spirit that we leave behind are what the legacy is all about. What is someone going to say about you? How is somebody going to feel about you? And what about you was so great that someone else is going to carry that on, whether it's that service spirit, whether that's humility, whether it's that's kindness. I remember when Guy was so kind to me, so generous, and you know what? I want to do the same, right? It could be it can be a isolated moment of their life, but I've had kids come up to me and say, "You saved my life with the conversation you had, right, with me, right? What are we leaving behind? Legacy, big picture, vision."
Yeah.
Right. And so we speak a lot about that. And I think that's what I mean. Like, when you start to think about the future, right, and not just stay in the now. Like, these are the problems. Become solution based, right? Don't just think of what the problems are, but how they can be fixed, right? Oh, well, this person ain't gonna fix, so it ain't gonna happen. Be optimistic.
And there it is.
You know what I mean? Be optimistic.
There it is.
You have to be more than, you know what I mean?
So in other words, don't be the problem, be the solution.
Absolutely. 100%. If you want change, you got to be the change.
You got to be the change.
Absolutely.
You got to be the change. Listen, man, we could probably go on for hours. You know what I'm saying? We running out of time and everything right now. But, like, what is something that you want to leave, since we talking about legacy, right? What is something that on this episode that you want to leave, you know, to your mother, your father, the young people, anybody out there that may be listening, whatever it is that God gives you and everything, let it loose.
I would say stay the course. Something that I grew up on, right? I didn't really understand it, but, you know, God puts us through these situations for a reason. And it's not just for ourselves. It's, like I said, it's for those around you. So that never quit statement is not just a cliche. It's not just something we believe in. It's something that works, right? Even in the deepest, darkest pits of our lives, which I've been there, and I've done it, and I'm still here, right? God sends you somebody or sends you something that changes your perspective on life itself.
Yeah.
But you can't quit to get that peace, right? You can't quit before he gives you that. You can't quit before it comes a time where you have to pass that lesson down on to the next person. So you have to stay the course, never quit, and just, like I said, just continue to find purpose in everything that you do.
Amen. Amen. Listen, everybody. It was such a healthy and good conversation. I got to learn a little bit more about Guy Steele. And listen, guys, I want you to really, really take these lessons. If you watch this all the way through, then you know what? If you listen all the way through, you know what? you got the juice. You know what I'm saying? You got the juice, because I know it's tough to listen to long form conversations and everything sometimes, but I do know that this was for somebody, and I want to go ahead and make sure that you guys get all the things that you need, because we want to supply you with as many tools as possible so that you can get to that next level in your life and fulfill your purpose. All right. So listen, like I always say, y'all, be unshakable. All right. When we change the mind, we change the game. Yesterday is gone, tomorrow worry about itself. Today is all we got. Okay. You guys go ahead and follow Guy, where can they follow you at?
They can follow me at still battle tested on
Still battle
still
tested.
underscore battle underscore tested on Instagram, and Guy Steele on Facebook. You can always follow us on the podcast, Being Unshakable. We're here.
Let's go. Let's go. Listen, everybody, make sure you guys go ahead and follow my man Guy Still. All right. Next week, we're going to have an awesome guest and everything as well, too. So I want to make sure you guys go ahead and get that. And just a quick thing. These episodes are going to be released every Tuesday, okay? If you're going to be, we want you to be a part of this family. We want you to be a part of the Unshakable Nation. Listen, every Tuesday, we're dropping these episodes, okay? There'll be videos that we lay out prior to, and then we're going to give you guys the full version, okay? Now, we have some things coming down the pike, okay? So please make sure that you guys stay tuned. We're going to be announcing what those special things are along in the next 30 to 60 days on what our plan is with the channel and how we want your help to help it grow. If you feel led to go ahead and donate to gift this podcast, if it's been a blessing to you, there's going to be some links down below that you guys go ahead and go ahead and be a blessing to elevate the channel so we can go to this next level and really, really elevate and reach more people so that they can be unshakable in their walk as well too. My name is Kenneth Allen Thomas. For Matt in the back, Guy Still. All right, listen, make sure when you change the mind, y'all, we change the game. Yesterday is gone, tomorrow worry about itself, and today is all we got. All right, I love y'all. Check y'all later. Peace.